Good morning, friends and fans. It's a cold, windy, blustery day here in Port Elizabeth, South Africa. And if it wasn't blowing some kind of weather out there, I'd be actually quite worried. It's Friday, so I thought I'd talk about one of my stories. Some people did ask me to talk about them, so I will. And then I'll read a short piece from it, just a short piece, my favorite bit. Panic horror in space is going to be my topic today. It's my third series after Galaxy and Quantum. And right now there are 3 titles available. It's Static, Life Science, and Dust. And Panic is basically horror in a sci-fi setting. That's why it's called Panic Horror in Space. And it has all my usual trademark weird stuff in there and off-the-wall, things, characterizations and so forth that you find in most of my writing. The story centers around the adventures and horrors of the crew of the starship Mercury, and it's Captain Stuart Flane. There are other characters who play important parts as well, such as Commander Vic Chapman, who's his XO, and the Doctor Fred Killian. Mostly the rest of the characters, they tend to change around quite a lot. Some of them get sticky ends, sort of like red shirts in Star Trek, I would say. Together they face all kinds of strange, spooky obstacles in space, things you wouldn't expect to find in space, like ghosts and zombies and so forth, which makes life very difficult for Stuart Flane because he's actually a huge skeptic. He doesn't believe in the paranormal at all, and neither do his superiors. So when he tries to report everything to his superiors, it really doesn't work out so nicely for him there. The first book in the series is called Static, and it introduces the characters and sets the tone for the future adventures. And Static is split up into 4 parts: Mercury Rising, Mercury Resurgent, Dead Center, and Through a Dark Glassy. In the first book, Flane and his crew encounter zombies, ghosts, and haunted items, and some pretty terrifying scenarios ensue. You might not know this, but I'm a huge fan of the Ghost Adventures series, and a believer in the paranormal, actually. And in part 3 of Static, I pay a homage to the Ghost Adventures crew, although it's in form of a satire. Captain Flane, you see at the outset, is a skeptic, and along comes this assignment that he really doesn't want, to escort the crew of a famous paranormal investigation TV show to what is probably the most haunted place in the galaxy, a deserted mining outpost called Floridia 7. The characters of the Spectre Adventures team working for the Interstellar Travel Channel are Max Sagans, Neil Gruff, Erin Goodman, and Millie Marley. Of course, these fictitious characters are loosely based on the Ghost Adventures team. And as a fan and paranormal buff, I had a really fun time writing about this part of the story. I really hope they don't mind the comparison too much. I really do admire them, and I think they're very brave for what they do. Anyway, I'm going to start reading from page 55 of Static. Give me a sec here, I have to open the file. Also, along with his new crew and the stinging stern reprimand from Commodore Peters, Flane had also been handed a new assignment, one which left him feeling certain that he was already being punished for his misfortune with even more misfortune. The Commodore had ordered him to essentially babysit a group of civilian TV personalities and their film crew for a few days. Not just any boring old TV personalities, mind you, paranormal investigators working for the Interstellar Travel Channel. Pfft, paranormal, he thought skeptically. One look at one of those zombs he and his crew had encountered, and they'd need a change of under everything. Commodore Peters hadn't reacted too kindly to his first words upon hearing what his new assignment was, but then, "What is this, a joke?" was probably not the most agreeable response he could have given. Alas, what was done was done. Not to apply more pressure onto Flane's already bruised shoulders, but apparently one of the investigators was Peter's own nephew. And since he was part of a long-running paranormal TV show called Spectre Adventures that got high ratings around the whole empire, and once Flane suspected, she'd applied the spin of, "It will make the fleet look good," Peters found pulling well-lubricated strings at HQ a little easier. The punchline was that a Space Fleet officer had been requested to participate as a member of the team. And guess whose shoulder her sinewy fingers rested on? It was, she called the assignment, a milk run. Her parting words to him were something along the lines of, "Don't fuck this up," In fact, all levity aside, they were exactly that. Thus it was that the ISS Mercury was again outward bound, headed toward the part of space where Flane always felt that the tightly knotted fabric of civilization begin to thin out, if not actually fray and completely unravel. It was the place where known and unknown space met the frontier. The particular destination on that part of the frontier, which was somewhat extensive, was a deserted mining base on a planet which had a reputation in certain circles, being naturally the paranormal investigation subculture and fan base. When Peters had informed Flane of their intended destination, he'd actually groaned out loud, but fortunately retained enough dignity to keep a straight face and successfully resisted the urge to give himself a facepalm in front of the Commodore. Deserved or not, Stuart Flane felt he'd had quite enough of creepy ghost and zombie shit, thanks very much, and would have preferred something more ordinary, like fighting Corsair marauders, facing a firing squad, or something of that nature. He shook his head in frustration, eyes closed, while resting his forehead on two tensed fingers of one hand. "Are you okay?" his friend and executive officer, Commander Vic Chapman, asked from his seat nearby him on the small bridge. "You look a little peeved." "Peeved?" Flane snapped. "We just survived that nasty business with the Zoms, not to mention 3 days of interrogation, and now we've got this to deal with." "Another crazy adventure," Vic grinned to Flane's chagrin. "Off to save the galaxy from the undead and supernatural." Stuart Flane didn't believe in ghosts. Neither did Vic. Neither of them believed in zombies either, but that only made being chased around an abandoned spaceship by something neither of them believed existed that much more surreal and frightening. Nor was the detail that they weren't exactly supernatural in nature much comfort to them while they watched the zombs chomping down on poor Ensign's Pierce and fuck it. "You're far too cheerful today, Vic," Flane sighed. "I mean, babysitting a bunch of TV stars on a jaunt to an abandoned mining outpost is one thing, but then again, at least you weren't ordered by Commodore Peters to participate in their little 12-hour lockdown personally." Vic giggled naughtily, just as the entire bridge crew paused in their work to turn and observe a tall, slightly muscular male in his early 30s sporting the latest gelled spiky hairstyle arriving on the bridge. I wonder who that is. Max Sagan wore black jeans, a plain black tee, and a shiny black jacket. He stopped at the entrance as the auto door slid shut behind him and smiled as if waiting for a cue from a director. A dull thud sounded from the closed door before it opened again a moment later, and another more portly fella, dressed similarly but sporting a short brown beard, sideburns, and a red bandana tied over his head, entered, rubbing his elbow and grinning sheepishly behind his camera display. "Come on, Aaron," Mac hissed under his breath. "I'm working here." "Sorry," Aaron Goodwin blushed. "Door didn't want to open for me. Rollin'. Captain Flane." Max Sagan smiled at Flane, who winced and closed his eyes as the little floodlight on top of Aaron's camera momentarily blinded him. "How long before we reach Floridia 7? We're really eager to get at those ghosts and demons." "Floridia 7? Oh, sorry. If they're not careful," Vic told Flane quietly aside, grinning with mounting appreciation for sarcasm, "they'll get mistaken for Corsairs, and that'll be the end of the show." Well, that's as far as I'm going to read today. I think you can see my voice is a little tired, and I'm starting to mix up the lines. But anyway, that's all for this time. Please leave your comments under the video, and have a great weekend. Bye.